Welcome, folks. We are back today with another episode of Mount Geek-More, where we're going to pick our selections, find the ones, the people that represent the Westerns. And in this case, we're going with any era Westerns. We spun the wheels, and when the wheels came out, it turned out we were going to do Westerns. Previously, we've done sci-fi. We actually had another series where we did 15 Most, and of course, that covered a nice bit of action. So now we're going to cover Westerns on Mount Geek-More. Joining me this evening, I've got Jeffrey, JPNT17. Jeffrey, say what's up, man.
What's up, man?
How you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I'm good.
Also join us. There you go. There you go. Got on my cowboy shirt. Joining us also this evening, we have insert cool nickname, Miss Brandy. How you doing tonight, Brandy?
Hello, how are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. So the three of us are going to go through our selections. We're going to start by just giving a rundown of our top five selection for the Western category, and then we'll pan through and we'll kind of sort and sift and determine who's actually going to make it to the mountain. Does anybody have a preference to start? If not, I will kick things off with my first one.
Have at it.
All righty. Starting off the Western selection.
I have a question.
What you got?
Because I had a few movies that I thought of where I was kind of wondering if you felt like they fit into the Western category. I'm gonna just ask about one.
Okay, and in the past we had another series where we did a top five, and we had a nice little debate on what technically qualifies as a Western. So if it happens to be the same movie, I can already tell you yes, but we will get to them as we go through.
I think
traditionally speaking, for me, I thought
the movie
cowboy movies. That's and that's how I looked at it.
So I'll just Slickers.
City Slickers technically
counts. They were cowboys.
That would qualify because they
not
were
on my list, but
cattle.
I just wanted to ask.
They were herding cattle, so
right. Oh, they were on horses. They had hats.
And now, whether or not that makes the cut to be on the mountain as a Western, we'll discuss that. But starting things off, of course, for me, traditionally, thinking about when I think of Westerns, I do think of cowboys. I think of 6-shooter revolvers, bang, bang, train robbery, stagecoach, the whole thing. And the number one movie that comes to mind for me whenever I think of Westerns is Tombstone. Tombstone probably stands out for some of the best acting in a Western with Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Michael Biehn, the whole cast. And it's got some iconic moments, iconic lines, and that is the epitome of a cowboy movie. That my mother, who is a huge cowboy fan, I told her we would be doing this show and asked her, what is her number one cowboy movie of all time? And knowing that this was going to be it, I picked this. And of course, when I talked to her, sure enough, Tombstone sits at the top of her list. So the first one that I want to submit for contention is Tombstone.
Did you say all five of yours? And then we'll go around. And because we got to tally up who all got what.
Sure. Okay. I had it written out to do it differently, but we could do it just like that. Okay. So then moving on, when I think of the character of a cowboy, admittedly for me, Cling Eastwood is the first person that comes to mind. And if I'm looking at the mountain and I see the faces of people who are going to be on the mountain, it just feels weird to not see Clint Eastwood up there. And the movie that I want to represent Clint Eastwood is going to be The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I think that is perhaps the most popular of the Clint Eastwood movies of him as a cowboy. The Sergio Leone trilogy movie set. I think any of those would have qualified, but most people are familiar with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So that's going to be my number two. My third selection, you see a lot of different cowboys, and a lot of people have a perception of what a cowboy looks like. So it was nice and refreshing to see a movie that had cowboys that I could relate to. And I thank Mario Van Peebles for coming out with the movie Posse. And I think Posse stands out as one of the better cowboy movies, and it's one that I think more people who enjoy cowboy movies should see. Um, Definitely a strong influence, and those were some dope looking cowboys. Like that was the kind of cowboy I would have wanted to be. Was one of these guys from Posse because I thought they was all cool as hell, especially if you had like Big Daddy Kane out there as a cowboy. Like
Mhm.
that's what you want there. Um, and staying with that, I was a big fan of laughing growing up. And I don't think you can really have a conversation about Westerns unless you mention Blazing Saddles. Um, Mel Brooks gave us a
I didn't
movie
even think
that
about that.
Mel Brooks gave us a movie that fits all the elements of a classic Western movie while being a complete parody and spoof of what a lot of people think of with Westerns. You have the sheriff who's going to come in and clean up town. And of course, you've got the evil rancher who's trying to bankrupt the town so he can buy it. And they've got all kind of nefarious plots, but the comedy stands the test of time. Probably couldn't make that kind of movie today, but
Absolutely not.
as a classic comedy, I think Blazing Saddles stands apart.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite movies, to be honest. And I'm
Yeah,
shocked that I didn't think of it. I guess because in my mind it's a comedy and I don't necessarily
but
correlate
see,
it with the Western, even though it absolutely is.
Ain't
yeah.
nothing funny about the West.
It's funny you say that because I struggled with what my last selection was going to be, what my number 5 movie was going to be, and again going back to just thinking about westerns as a whole. Growing up, my mom, as I mentioned, she's a big westerns fan, so it was nothing to look up at the TV and a western be on. A lot of times now, when I go to visit her, I'm at the house and the TV's on. It's usually a Western playing. And if you want my mom to stop what she's doing and sit down, just go to the TV, find the Western channel. She'll find some laundry or something to fold so she can sit there and watch these cowboys. And the movie True Grit is perhaps one of the most iconic cowboy movies. And I have to say the movie True Grit. And I'm just going to say whichever one you pick fits. Um,
No, 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 no. You
I
got
like
to
the
pick, my
original.
brother.
I do like the original.
I
Not
I
gonna lie.
have written
It was
down
really
I
good.
have written down the 1969 original True Grit with John Wayne, Rooster Cogburn. That was my selection. But I also have the 2010 for the movie. The
Yeah.
movie in 2010 stands out to represent that. But when I thought of Cowboys, John Wayne on screen, Rooster Cogburn, that was what I picture. So I'm going to put the 1969 True Grit. And those are my 5.
All right, I'll go
So,
last. We got to break it up. Not have so much man talk.
fair
Not
enough. Fair enough.
not the man talk.
Well, we're not gonna mansplain no westerns. So, Miss Brandy, what you got?
This ain't that kind of
Ain't
podcast.
that kind of show?
Mm, mm.
Okay, so I guess I would just read them the way that I had them in order. The first one on my list was Tombstone. And then I mean I feel like that was covered pretty adequately.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great movie.
Such a good
Literally,
movie.
when they feel like westerns, that was the first thing that popped into my head. Um,
Same.
my next one, I feel like I was a little on the fence, but if Blazing Saddles can make it, then I can have this one. And that is Young Guns.
Definitely thought about it. Definitely thought about it. If we were doing like a 15 most, it would have made it, no question. But in the top 5, that was my conflict. But yeah, Young Gun.
And then I have The Unforgiven as my Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Well, because I also have The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
those are literally the two: Good, Bad, the Ugly, and Unforgiven. List is
And
most
then
popular.
for my alternative choice of cowboy movie that I enjoyed because the cowboys look like me and I appreciated that. I actually really enjoyed this movie. And I don't know. I didn't hear a lot about it, but I had a good time. And that was The Harder They Fall.
Harder they fall. Yes, ma'am.
I was like 2 seconds away from being like, "Are you about to talk about that Lisa Ray movie?"
No, what was that? Bells. What was it?
Yeah,
Not Southern Bells. What was that movie? It was actually not bad.
I know the way you
Going
was
to the Dust
qualifying it,
Zone.
it made it seem like it was gonna be like a deep cut like that.
Well,
Right.
because again, I don't really hear people talking about it, so I don't really know how it was received. I
Gang of
assume not
Roses.
great, but yeah, there it is.
Gang of Roses.
That was
Starring
actually, I'm telling you, that movie was not bad. It was a good movie.
I mean, the
the black
casting was
ones.
fire. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the casting was fire. All right, so
I
we
think
got
that's a strong. I think that's a strong list. I think it's
I have an
well
honorable
balanced.
mention, and that was just had it in my brain.
which one did
Time
you down?
travel, trains, Doc Brown.
Back to the
Oh,
Future
Back to the
3.
Future 3.
Right. But I didn't know. And if like I wish I would have known that before he said Blazing Saddles, because maybe I would have put that instead of I don't
I
know
think
what.
your I think your list is better without it.
All
That's
right, so
a western.
you had
It was a
Tombstone, Young
western.
No, it
Guns,
was.
Harder They Fall, and
The good, the bad, the unforgiven, and the good, the bad, and
Unforgiven. Okay, that was the one I did. Okay,
I fuck with Unforgiven until they killed Morgan Freeman.
the
It's like he could have made it.
he really could have, really could.
He could have.
Okay, and I'm
You're
gonna put down
right.
back to. I will put down Back to the Future. I would just make a note of it here as your number 5, which is like technically your alternate, unless you
Yeah.
would like for me to put Blazing Saddles in its place. Your call.
If I had to choose between those two, then put Blazing Saddles.
I will
The
put.
way
I
I
will.
adore
I'm
Mel
just
Brooks
listing that as your
every day.
alternate. So
I just cringe because the man is 100 years old, and I'm just going to come apart when he love that man.
all
Just
right.
the fact that Richard Pryor came in and he was like, "Listen, I want to write this movie, but I don't know how to write a funny black guy like that, like a good one. You come in and do what you do, and
Yeah.
that'll make my movie funnier." And he was right. And so many
Yeah.
people try to write in other people's voices. I just really respect the fact that, you know what I mean? He made that character, could have been a parody, he could have been a joke, he could have been one dimensional. And he
Yeah.
was a great character. And so was Gene Wilder. It was just,
You know, I think with Blazing Saddles for me, it's like he is like in some ways kind of playing up that caricature of what they have always wanted like black people to be on screen, but he's
yeah,
doing it in a way where like when black people are pretending and only the black people in the room get it and the white
yeah,
people are like think it's sincere. I feel like that's like the nuance in that performance
yes.
that gets like overlooked. It's like, yeah, if he like, where the white women at? Like he not really asking where the white women at, but he's asking it in a way because he knows everybody in the town is expecting him to come in and just go all
And be like
crazy for
that.
these
Right.
mediocre white women living in this random town in the middle of nowhere. And here comes
Mediocre.
this
My
big
chest.
black buck ready to just tear down the entire township. And it's like, yeah, I know that's what you think of me, so I'll play
Right.
into it a little bit. And I feel like as a black person watching Blazing Saddles, it was like, all right, like
To be in on
the joke is
Right.
actually
We're
like
in
on
on the
y'all.
joke.
Right.
Absolutely.
We're in on the joke more than like the white people who like Blazing Saddles are in on the joke, in a way.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it. Because
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, this what y'all think, this what y'all want us to be? Okay, here you go.
That's just like in the
Sum it up.
beginning when he's like, sing a Negro spiritual. And they're like, I get no kicks from champagne. It's just really fun. It's really the timing. Perfect movie. It is an amazing movie. One of my all-time top 5 favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and Airplane, comedy-wise. Like there, I don't care how old, I don't care how many times I've seen
Yeah.
it. It will never, ever not literally have me in tears.
When that white lady started talking jive on the airplane, I
I
was
think
like,
I can
Swear
help.
to God.
Hey, brother, don't get me.
Swear to you. They could
all
never
right,
make those today. Oh my
hell
gosh.
no.
I think I
People's
can help.
head
I
would
speak some
explode.
jive, actually. Oh, that's fun. All right, Jeff. What
All
you
right.
got?
So I wrote down a bunch of movies. I actually realized I've watched more westerns than remembered more liking more westerns than I thought I did. Obviously, my number one is Tombstone. Val Kilmer was like I still remember the first time I saw that movie. I still remember the first time I saw Val Kilmer twirl that cup like it was a gun. You know, I still say I'm your Huckleberry.
cool.
I still say, why Johnny Ringo looked like somebody just walked over your grave. Like just so many good lines. It's the good guys win, but it's not corny. You feel like you go on the emotional roller coaster
It was a
with Kurt
cost.
Russell.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
it was really like it was the first movie where I felt like I understood the stakes of like what people were going through versus like just watching random like
Oh, shoot 'em
natives get
up or
shot off
whatever.
gun off
Yeah.
horses in like older movies with my
Right.
granddad. This was the first one where it's like, oh, some of the good guys got shot. Some of the good guys
Right.
got killed. Like when he told that man, when the fighting starts, you get the fighting. I was like, oh yeah, like this is action packed,
Real.
and I'm enjoying
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, Tombstone obviously in a clean sweep. Number two, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Again, like when you think of westerns, I think of Clint Eastwood in a poncho.
And
You
the
know,
music. The
yeah,
music cue.
all that.
That's why I say that's perhaps of that trilogy, that one's the most famous.
Yeah, for
With the
sure.
chair root. He had the chair root cigar with the
Yeah,
poncho and the low hat. I mean, come on.
yeah,
It's iconic.
yeah. And it's like you start carving images into a mountain, and that's gonna be one of them.
Yeah.
Squinty eyes and the scruffy beard, just really just like the I would say like the seriousness taken towards the direction in those movies. Like they they didn't have a ton of dialogue. It wasn't like Clint Eastwood chatting it up with so and so. It's like visuals and like because I tried to watch that movie once when I was like working on something and I was like, I don't know what the fuck going on. Is anybody saying nothing?
Quiet, right.
I
It's
know it's something
true.
happening because the music changes and now we zooming in on stuff. But I think just in terms of like being a visual masterpiece, creating just like iconic moments and looks, and it not being dependent on dialogue, and really creating this mystique about the West of like these quiet men with guns who just took care of business. I think really helped keep the Western alive at a
Yeah.
Yeah.
point where things like sci-fi and things like you know modern day thrillers and the Western held off the mobster movies and all those other things, and I think that
True.
that Clint Eastwood like revival coming after a John Wayne was a big part of that. Number three for me, The Magnificent Seven, the original one. I saw that when I was young. I
Yeah.
think it was the first time I really under. It was another time where it was like it had stakes. There's a big cast. Everybody,
Yeah.
it's like the team up. It's the Western
The
Avengers,
Avengers. Facts.
and I
Yeah.
think seeing like this movie where it's like these different people and everybody not just shooting guns. Somebody strong. Somebody know how to build stuff. This person know how to do that.
Yeah.
Seeing that applied to the Western was like new for me as a kid seeing the movie because I'm just so used to like the lone gunman, the one
And
man riding solo across
let's say
the
in
plain in the sunset. And it's like, nah, like,
Old Town. Yeah.
some people like Batman, some people like X-Men. Like to me, this was more up my alley because you get to see interpersonal dynamics.
Absolutely.
Number four, Five Goes West. Got to get animated. Can't I can't do if it's a cartoon. I'm in there, but I think a lot of people love the original Five like American Tail. That one is very emotional for me, but this
Me
one is
too.
like fun. It's like there's stakes. It's tough, but for me as a kid, seeing that helped me. It actually helped me appreciate like live action westerns more because
Okay.
I got the references in Five because I watched westerns like with my granddad. So I think like Five Goes West and using like the cartoon element of the western to kind of bring that to kids, I think was like smart and it left like a big impression like on me. Five, Django. I don't think I gotta go into a lot about why. Jamie Foxx my favorite actor. Killing racist people is one of my favorite things to see in movies. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's actually a shock his solo at five. It's just the other ones had um impressions on me when I was younger, and I
Coming
feel
up,
like
yeah.
they're like foundational in me understanding what I like in a western. And then Django is like, here's all of it except for like the animation in one movie and more. So yeah, that's my list.
Yeah, that's a
It's
very
a good
solid
list.
list. I will
It
say the
is.
only thing that I did not mention, the honorable mention, I did have um, Unforgiven written down next to The Good, the Bad, the Ugly as my alternate Clint Eastwood, probably his second, in my opinion at least, his second most famous cowboy movie. Because at that time, that was kind of like a return. He had done all these other movies for so long. Then for him to come back as this older man and do
Yeah.
this Western was like a return to greatness for him. In my opinion, he's still done other good movies, but that was Unforgiven. Definitely, I feel like an honorable mention for two other movies, Quick and the Dead, just
Yeah,
because I just enjoy that damn movie.
yeah.
Quick and the Dead is such an enjoyable movie.
I
Sharon
think that
Stone,
was like the one of the first like modernized
yeah,
like westerns, but they were like,
Western.
we gotta do more than a 6 shooter.
right.
We gotta shoot this in a modern way. It was like Fast and the Furious, but
I was about to say the movie
westerns.
because the whole movie is kind of based around a it's a revenge story, it's a gunslinger competition, it's quick draw, it's all the appealing parts of westerns, and that's the focus. And even right down to Preacher, who throws the man a gun, he has no bullets, he has to get out the cuffs, gets one bullet, catch, boom, and like what? Russell Crowe was so dope in that. And it's like it really had some great characters, great acting. So that was definitely an honorable mention. And because I think I watched it like 10 times in high school, it has an impression. Dances with Wolves is one that kind of like it falls into that iconic category somewhere separate, like wherever Titanic falls into like movies, this is like in that genre, in that area, but for westerns. I've seen it enough times. I don't ever have to see it again. Plus, it's like long as I remember Dances with Wolves was like
Man, Kevin Costner
two
gotta stop.
VHSs. Like that was such a
Everything he
big thing.
make so long.
Right.
Too much.
It really is. And that was like that's the thing. It's such a long movie. But it's again as we're getting into the transition and it is Avatar, but a cowboy movie. You know what I'm saying? Like with Blue Space Alien Avatar. That's Avatar's Dances with Wolves in Space. Like it's the
Yeah.
same
It
thing to
is.
me. And that's where it starts. But those are my two honorable mentions.
Can I
Yeah,
Oh, Brandy, do you have honorable mentions?
I have one, but I don't know that at all.
that's why it's an honorable mention. This is your list. This is your list. It's not one that you're wanting to put up on the mountain, but
Okay. Okay.
that's
Honorable mention. The movie is Maverick
yes.
with Mel
Yes,
Gibson and Jodie
absolutely.
Foster and
Mel
James
Gibson
Garner.
card play. Yeah,
I loved it so
that
much.
absolutely
And
counts.
does it
That
count? It's
that
not
is
really like cowboy y. They're not like herding
that
cattle.
the era that it takes place in 100% qualifies it as a western. And that's the thing. And that's why we said like that's why City Slickers could have worked. It's a western. It doesn't I say for me, I think of cowboys.
True.
But that does not mean that there aren't westerns that aren't. There are other movies that other people may have come up with, and I had a whole argument one time about No Country for Old Men,
Hell
and
no. Wait, no.
surprisingly enough,
I was,
yeah,
Well,
surprisingly
I
enough,
don't consider that a Western. It certainly had Western themes. I watched that not too long ago. That movie is so good.
and
One of the greatest villains ever put on film. I'm
ap-
sorry. He said
apparently
5 words. He
it
didn't need to say
qualifies.
more.
Yeah,
I definitely think it qualifies. It has Western themes. Like
yeah,
I would say that Llewellyn was a cowboy. I would say that.
yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah,
I
it
think
is actually categorized as a western. When you look the movie
is
up
it
on all
really? Is it? Well,
it is all the categories. You can always find it in the Western category,
I
which
have
is
one. I can't think of the name of it, and I know that y'all are smarty arts.
What you got?
The Sinbad movie, the Sinbad cowboy movie. It came on HBO, and I don't think it was very big, but I loved
Cherokee Kid.
that movie.
The
Yes,
Cherokee Kid.
where he had to learn how to be a
I was
cowboy.
about to say the Cherokee Kid. I had to.
I loved that movie. I know nobody. It was a throwaway HBO movie, but it I like was obsessed with that movie for a period of
I mean,
time.
that's the kind of shit we all used to watch. Sinbad
Yeah.
was the man. He was everywhere.
And he always made something you could watch.
He
Yeah.
responded to me on Twitter one time.
Aw.
I
What's
tweeted,
up?
I was like, I need to go to bed, but I'm up watching Sinbad teach this white boy how to dance in First Kid. And he responded, get some sleep.
Him. I love
Yeah.
him. He's part of my childhood, and I love his stand up to this day. I seen him live. I just think he's great. So all the recovery to Sinbad if he ever sees this.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, I would absolutely say Cherokee Kid.
It's an alternate. I know that it's
No,
not
I mean
local.
that's a but that is a good western, and of course a western comedy on top of that, and a good, nice, wholesome, family friendly kind of thing. So yeah, it's a good selection. Like I wouldn't even be mad if that was actually one of your if you would pick that as one of your primaries. I can't necessarily say it would have made the mountain, but it was a damn good pick. um,
All right.
okay, so let's see. So I would say
Wait,
we've got two for the
let me
mountain.
I didn't, I just
Oh, I'm
had
sorry.
one couple things I wanted to, just on the like outside looking in. I definitely had City Slickers outside looking in. Quick and the Dead, the same. Fistful of Dollars also, but I just went with Good,
Oh,
the Bad,
that's a
the
good
Ugly.
one.
Yeah,
Um,
I said the whole
One
trilogy.
that I never hear people
Yeah.
talking about because, and I enjoy it because it's a comedic take on Western, the Apple Dumpling Gang, starring Don
Oh, I
Knotts and
used
Tim
to love
Conway.
that. I haven't seen that in so long. Oh, I used to
I
love
think
that
it's
movie.
I think it's hard to make westerns for kids, and my son was dying laughing watching that movie because of all the physical comedy.
Yeah.
When we were
Yeah.
like really young, my wife was like, "What the hell is this?" But the movie I wanted to ask about, it's not on my list, but I'm curious: is if you would consider Urban Cowboy to be a western with John Travolta?
No. No. And I love that movie. I like that Looking
Just
for Love. That was my movie.
Okay.
But
just because it has cowboy in the name.
right. No, well,
um,
because he wasn't a cowboy. Like the whole point of the
right.
movie was that he was it was no.
He was a city guy. Like
Yeah, no,
No,
no. I'm
he
sorry.
was a country guy, and he moved to the city.
But it wasn't in the country. It wasn't like he was doing cowboy things.
He was
Cowboy
riding that
teams.
bull though. He was riding that bull.
I mean,
It was a great movie. Deborah Winger was so hot in
you
that
start you
movie.
start opening it up to categories like the Luke Perry movie 8 Seconds, where it's like that's about bull riding, and
Right. I would
it does
consider
fall into
that
that.
more of a cowboy movie than Urban Cowboy.
And seeing it's like the what else I'm saying, like with him riding the bull, that's like I kind of see where the argument's being made, but it does fall more into that gray area. Now
What about Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore?
he was just on a farm. That's not quite.
True. He wasn't a cowboy. He was on a
Right.
farm.
All right.
But
I just
but
want to
I
find the lines of demarcation.
right, like I would say that's and see, and even then it would still kind of be off in that
Even then
that wouldn't
I
fall
would
under
give it
Western.
precedence over Urban Cowboy. And I don't know
Right.
why.
No, I mean,
I
and see,
don't
but
really know what it just seemed more like more country life type than Urban
and
Cowboy.
that's what I was about to point out. Like it falls into that category still of Western. We're not talking about best cowboy movies. It happens that all of the movies that we've discussed so far have pretty much been cowboy movies, but it's more the category is Western. And so
Yeah.
urban cowboy, he's in a Houston bar, it's like he's in the city of Houston, like he's separated and
Pasadena, Texas.
It's
it's
like
like
Far and Away, one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies that nobody ever saw. That was a very Western movie, but I would never try to add it to the list. Him and Nicole Kidman.
Oh, but that's because then they spent half the movie in Ireland.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it was real cowboyish at the end. They was like in the plains and
Right. Yeah, that's the movie that made me realize America is some bullshit. This is
yeah.
motherfuckers is whoever get there first.
Yeah, and it wasn't their land to give. It wasn't even theirs to give away. That's the really messed up part.
Now
That really,
Crazy.
you know
that
what's
really was
interesting.
the first time I was like, wait a minute,
It does actually come up.
the
Urban
Western.
Cowboy actually does come up listed as a Western romance.
All right, well there you go.
So
Then I guess it
we have
is
to put it in there. Have to put it
facts.
in as an option. Like I
All
wouldn't have put
right,
it in
can
there.
I
I'm
have
with you there.
No.
this dance
But yeah,
for the
that's
rest
okay.
of
That's
my
so
life?
hell. Now I want to look up son-in-law. I'm just curious.
I'm sure it's just a comedy. Come on, it's
No,
Right.
bullshit.
that's
That's
just gonna
that's
be a
definitely
comedy.
that. I mean that probably falls into rom-com at best. But
Interesting.
okay. So let's see. As we tally up here, we have two for sure that made the cut, and that's the good, the bad, and the ugly in Tombstone.
Right.
Um,
I thought the Unforgiven too. No, or is that too many
I
Clint
think
Eastwoods?
I think you're the only one that picked Unforgiven.
you had
But
Unforgiven on your list. I had it as an alternate.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
yeah,
And it would have been if somehow there was like no other, like if nobody else said the good, the bad, the ugly, I may have just put Unforgiven as my Clint Eastwood.
Right.
But since I went first, I had that down as my primary option. And so Unforgiven was to make sure that we got some Clint Eastwood representation. So
Well,
let's see.
I stand behind True Grit, the original, and I will give up Young Guns for that
Okay. Okay.
because I
So
feel
I'll go.
like iconically it doesn't get. I don't know. I just feel like that's a great representation of you can't do westerns without a John Wayne. You
You
just
could.
can't.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just
I mean,
with the
you just can't.
contribution to the genre,
Right.
it's
And
very
because of
difficult.
that, I will co-sign True Grit. It's a great movie. It is.
I like
Both
I
versions, but I have a soft
And
spot for the original. That's the one my
yeah,
dad liked.
I'll
yeah.
say I will co-sign that too as like because like I'm always about categories, so it's like I kind of was thinking about just like old ass westerns when I picked
Mhm.
Magnificent Seven, but I think True Grit is also like a good representation of that era as well. So I would be fine with that being the mountain,
This isn't
which means we have one
complicated at
last
all.
slot,
Yeah.
and I would like to advocate for us potentially choosing something that I mean, probably it's probably Blazing Saddles because just choosing something that's not like your traditional, straightforward, very serious western. And so
Right.
it's like I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at like I mean, Django is still pretty much a western, but the only difference is like it's a black person, which
Well,
is
yeah, it's
not different
modern.
from Blazing Saddles, and
Right.
then
No.
Five Goes West, which is animated. So I'm cool with
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles being in there just to put a black man up on that mountain next to them. Well, at
And them other
least
But I
cowboys.
felt you when
two
you
of
were
them wouldn't
like
have a problem.
American Tail was very emotional and Five Goes West was fun. It was more
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like Land Before Time. I don't know what it was with the cartoons back then, just to
Right.
traumatize the hell out of these children. But
hey
American
man,
Tail was devastating to me as a little girl. Like I remember being, I'm old enough to have seen that in the theater with my dad, and I
Right.
remember being horrified that this boy was never, you know what I mean? Like it was very emotional. Whereas you're right,
Right.
American Five Goes West was, and there's not a lot of Western cartoon movies.
no.
Outside of like Rango, Johnny Depp animated
I
thing.
didn't watch that. I just didn't feel like that I needed.
You're yeah.
Okay, good.
It was one of
Yeah,
those things where it's like the way they filmed it was much more interesting than like what
in the
ended up
The
getting
movie.
movie.
filmed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I don't feel bad because I didn't
Yeah.
see that. I stand behind Blazing Saddles. I will give up the harder they fall as long as there's at least one black man on the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think Posse made enough of an impact, but it's like,
Great soundtrack to that, by the way.
yeah. I mean, I
Posse
would
had a good
definitely pick
soundtrack.
Blazing Saddles over Posse
Yeah.
to be the
Absolutely. I would.
representation.
I would.
I would pick Blazing Saddles over. And I think that's kind of where I would look at like I would challenge maybe like even see because I would pick Django over Posse. I would probably pick Django over Posse,
It's
but
like
I would
Posse is one of those where it's like I do not mean any mitochondria of disrespect when I say this, but
You
it is one of those movies that like
had to be there.
there are better movies that have been made since then
yeah
because of that movie. And so
Yes.
even though that movie is a quality film, it's like the people who like the harder they fall is like better than Posse, but the harder they fall is better than Posse because people who were in and made the harder they fall saw Posse. And
yeah
Yeah.
so the question then becomes like, does the impact
More
outweigh the
important
quality?
than
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
it is a one crawl so the other could walk kind of thing.
yeah.
yeah.
I
But it's like we
absolutely
gotta be
agree.
real about you. You still crawl.
Yeah,
It's
and
like when you it's like the Olympics. Like somebody break your world record, cool. Like it was a world record. Like in the 80s, like 10 seconds was fast.
yeah,
Yeah.
Now you're not
we
even getting to
we
the
we
middle
scratching on
race.
8.
2 seconds.
We
Fact.
knocking
Right,
on the door of
right.
8. So it's
Now they right. I was gonna say now they at 7 and looking over at people in the lane next to them.
yeah,
Like they running in slow mo. It was like a
Right.
scene from the Flash. Like, man, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
yeah.
What? Insanity.
So I
I've
want you to
never
see me
seen
past you.
insanity straight up. Those women were running.
Okay, well then that gives us our Mount Geek-More.
Oh snap! That was
And
pretty painless too.
for I think a lot of it had to do with not trying to relegate and we were fortunate that when we spun the wheel because I added that one in this go round. Of course we have like all the different decades, we have the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s and whatnot, and just looking at it, and I was looking when I clicked on the one for westerns, and I had already added in like an open genre just so that we would have some options to like let's put the any category in there to like really mix it up, because I think when we get around to maybe doing one of the other categories, instead of relegating it to comedies of the 60s, or if we say
Right.
like the Mount Geek-More of any comedy, you know what I'm saying, like any era, that opens it up for some unique discussion.
That
And
might open it up too much.
That's
well,
too
and I
Like
get that
westerns, I feel like you have to because if you were like 60s westerns, we all would have the same movies.
there was be like yeah there would have, and there would have been three of them would have been Clint Eastwood movies, you know what I'm saying.
That's what I'm
yeah.
It
saying.
would have
Like
been it would have been Pale Rider. It would have been
the
The Good, the Bad, the
Alamo, I
Ugly.
don't.
You know, so yeah, and I think this one being in any era category, it really worked out. So I was actually quite happy when I hit the little spinners and that selected. But
Yes.
for any era, Mount Geek-More, GrownAGeeks have selected Tombstone, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the 1969 True Grit, and Blazing Saddles. Folks, that is it. That is our list. But we thank you for having joined us. We hope you've enjoyed. Be sure to leave in the comments any movies you think should have made the list that did not make the list. If you think some of our alternates should have been on there but did not make it, please let us know. Also, be sure to click that QR code where you can find everywhere Grown A Geeks can be found. Join our Facebook group. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We thank you for having watched this episode. For Jeffrey, JPNT17, insert cool nickname Brandy, I'm Elder Geek Sam, and we are out of here.